November 17th at 5 p.m. taking place in person at Saltonstall School, 211 Lafayette Street in Salem. Please announce your devices. Thank you for joining us. For those who would like it, Spanish and Portuguese interpretation is available. The interpreters are at the door there if you require headsets. Child care is being provided for the gym for tonight's meeting. The purpose of this evening's meeting is to hear public feedback on the proposed elementary school configuration study, including the presentation that was provided to the school committee and the public on November 3rd. This evening we'll start with a presentation from the superintendent's right, Assistant Superintendent Mr. Pauly. And following that, we'll open the floor to public comment. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. If you wish to provide comment, please be sure that you're signed up on the sign-up sheet, which is over on the table to my right. Your left if you're in the audience. We'll be calling people up in the order in which you are signed up. You do not need to use your name to sign up or to your school affiliation. You just need to indicate something so when I say it, you know that it's referring to you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Craig.
Good evening, everybody. I appreciate everybody's here and the engagement that I know we're going to hear tonight. I'm going to come around and speak. I do want to first thank the Saltonstall School as they come around the edge of the corner here. I want to thank the PTO for Saltonstall, the leadership for hosting this event. They provided refreshments, which was unexpected, and the amount of child care. Thank you for hosting. We appreciate it. I just wanted to start with a few comments. A lot of this is driven by the questions that we've received over the last few weeks. And I would appreciate it if you literally hundreds of emails that we've received in the community conversations. I think I've probably spoken to at least all total staff and families of these 20 different groups during the course of the last 2 weeks. So I appreciate the opportunity to have those conversations. We learned a lot, and I know we'll continue to learn a lot this evening. But I did want to give some background on some of the questions. A lot of people ask about our financial projections, and I'm very pleased that our Assistant Superintendent, Paul, is going to be sharing that with you after I do my comments. But I just want to start by reframing the scenarios that were presented on November 3rd. There were 4 different scenarios that were presented to the school committee. One involved Saltonstall enforcement merging and the Forest Band building. The second one, Carlton and Saltonstall merging and the Saltonstall building. Another scenario, Saltonstall enforcement merging at Forest Band, eventually moving into the Saltonstall building. And finally, Carlton enforcement merging at the Forest Band building. So those were the scenarios that were presented for consideration and review, and we fully expected to have a lot of discussion and hear a lot of input, which we have and will continue to hear over the next couple of weeks. But I just wanted to refrain people that those were the recommendations that were made in the November 3rd meeting for consideration. There were obviously others that the consultants, who I do want to acknowledge that the consultants presented are here. Dr. Anderson and Dr. Fowler, they won't be presenting tonight. They will be here to listen to the comments so that we can respond to questions that come up later on and respond to comments received. But they also shared other scenarios that they did not recommend for consideration. So, just a couple of reflections. I want to go back to remind folks of why we entered this conversation to begin with. We were very, there's been a significant focus around a long-term viability as a school district, and our fiscal sustainability is something that was very important for us. And we thought that looking at our elementary portfolio was one of many things that we could do to look at helping achieve a balanced budget for the school district long-term and continue to offer the programs that we know our parents really value and want in our schools. We think that this is a district that has continued to move forward, and we want to make sure we can do that for many years to come. So while there's some short-term concerns, there's also long-term concerns. We want to continue to be a district that's growing in enrollment, that is growing in the number of students who are staying with us, and we want to be a place where kids are having an amazing learning experience. And I have been very encouraged by the many comments I've received about how much people love their schools. And this has been a significant reminder to me of how much people care and deeply they feel so connected to the choices that they've made for the schools for their child. While I
I don't think that's like that everywhere. I think that's something important to recognize, is people feel so connected to the staff, the community that they've chosen to be a part of. And that for me has been very rewarding to read in many comments that I've seen. But part of it, we also want to continue to keep our focus on equity, the needs of the students who need the most, continue to get the most, and again, we want to make sure we elevate this learning experience for every child. I will say, I want to be clear that when going into this, the school committee was very clear to the consultants that they wanted to rule out the dispersal of any students. That did not go well in the past without it, that if we were going to merge, that it was students and staff moving together to a school, but not to split up schools. That was a premise that was given to the consultants because we heard loud and clear for multiple years that was a concern. And I do also want to say, going into this, we were committed to engaging with the public around data, sharing all the data. I think the school committee has said this many times. They didn't know what the scenarios were going to be that were going to be presented, but it was important that when they heard it, the public heard it, and then there would be a period of discussion, which tonight is one of those periods of discussion. And all these meetings we're having because we genuinely care what people have to say before we make a decision. And any decision will be better once after we engage with the community. We didn't want to just put a scenario on, say this is what we think is going to happen, and then rush to make a decision. So, and I think, we continue to put out information. There's a lot on the Reconfiguration website. There will continue to be a lot. Some of the themes we've heard are, and this is what we're going to address, I'm going to address in our presentation, information about the SPS projected deficit. There's a lot of questions about that. There are questions about what are the alternatives to school merger. The traffic, I've heard a lot about traffic, so it requires its own slide. Class size and building utilization is something we've heard a lot about as well. Benefits from a larger elementary consolidation, like what's the benefits of a bigger elementary school versus a smaller. We've gotten a lot of questions. And then a lot of really thoughtful questions about how do we support students, staff, and families through any sort of a transition, if that is what happens. So traffic concerns. Just want to acknowledge traffic is horrible, especially at the Horace Mann site. And so we would have to, if a merger happens at Horace Mann, we would have to stagger the start and end time at Salem High School. There's no doubt. We probably need to do that anyway. If any of you were caught in that traffic, no, and I see some nodding heads over here. So we definitely need to look at that, regardless of whether there's a merger or not. I will say that the traffic analysis that was done, it wasn't a full study, and I spoke with the traffic consultant today from Salem, the Salem High School project. It was an initial analysis that was done, but when they did that analysis, it was projecting 1,500 kids there at that site because, well, actually more. It was projecting a high school of 1,500 because at the time we were looking at a 7 to 12 plan, and so he had to look at Horace Mann being current size plus a potential 7 to 12 of 1,500 students. And when I spoke to him, he said, yes, it can work with that many vehicles up there or that many students, but you do have to stagger the start and end times, and you have to look at, even before the high school project comes on, you do have to look at the routes in and out, and you're going to have to do some additional analysis. So we will, if that's the decision that the school committee makes, we will definitely have to do more analysis, and we will have to change the traffic patterns prior to the new high school building being built. I do hope that the new high school building will improve life for everybody up in that area, but that won't be for another 5 years, and there will be more immediate needs to address the traffic right now. Class sizes. There's been a lot of questions about what the consultants had in the presentation. When they say minimum full capacity, that is smaller than our current assignment practice. They were just projecting that classes were smaller than what our current practices are. But the maximum full capacity reflects what's in the contractual amount in our contract, which is an average 25 students at the elementary level. Our current practice is below the contractual amount, what's set in the contract. We assign 21 in kindergarten, 22, I think, in first, then 22 in second, 23 in third, and then fourth is 24, and fifth is 25. I think I got that right. So it is below the contractual amounts. And again, we hope by, one of the things we've said is that we are not projecting an increase in elementary class sizes with our merger scenarios. While the building may be bigger, or the merged building will have more students, we don't anticipate the class sizes. We hope to keep our class sizes where they are right now. And I also want to be clear, because there was also some, I think, confusion about our substantially separate classes. We do not anticipate making changes to our substantially separate classrooms, like merging them together, like one school has a program, another school has a program, and when they come together, those programs would merge together. Yeah, I'm sorry if that was the impression that was given in the presentation. That is not what we're planning to do. Those students, the students in substantially separate classes have very specific IEPs that we have to honor, it's required to be in substantially separate classrooms, and we will honor those. Of course, we have a legal obligation to do that. So I don't want to confuse that there will be a merger of separate classrooms if a school merger occurs. Okay. So I do want to just talk a little bit about overall elementary utilization and capacity. A lot of people have asked about, projected growth of elementary population in Salem. While there's a chance that the enrollment will go up a little bit, the forecast that the city has shared and that we've seen is that we won't expect to see significant increases in elementary population in the next 5 to 10 years. Even with new construction, a lot of the construction isn't slated to be for families. But even if we did have an influx of families, we believe that we are underutilized by almost 1,600 seats at the elementary level. I'm just share the math with you on how that works. We have about 218 empty seats in existing classrooms, meaning that in the classrooms that we have, that we operate right now, under our caps that we've set, there's still 218 seats across the elementary schools. Of course, that's at all different grade levels, but we do have, in particular, we have a lot of room in 4th and 5th grade in some schools. Some of you are going to look at me like, not in my school, we don't have that. But I can assure you that those numbers are real as of right now. There's about 218. Kindergarten is our tightest grade in the school system right now. And then the consultants look at how many empty classrooms there are across the system. They took out all the classrooms that are for music and art, and so we assumed every school had a music and art room, which I know everybody appreciates having. And then we were left with 60 spaces that are classroom-sized spaces that could accommodate a full class. And so I did the math by just 23 students per class, on average, just say that was the average across all the grade levels. That would give us 1,380 seats. That number shouldn't be 1,598, it should be 1,380. And for a total amount of seats that is almost 1,600 across our elementary schools. And I think that's a pretty conservative number, just looking at, now those spaces are being used by schools now. They're being used by offices, they are being used for planning areas, they're being used for conference rooms in some cases, but that's a nice luxury to have that most schools don't necessarily have. We just happen to have a lot of space across our elementary schools right now. I do want to talk a little bit about the benefits of larger elementary schools. I think there are benefits of larger schools. I've been a principal of I was a principal of a school that had 1 strand and 160 kids, and I was also a principal of an elementary school with 450 kids. There are benefits to a larger school. Collaboration across grade levels is important for teachers. I do think ideally a 3 or 4 strand school, meaning 3 or 4 classrooms per school, is an ideal because teachers can plan together. They have partners that they can work with. Sometimes in our 2-strand schools, you have one teacher who teaches math and the other teaches English language arts at the elementary school, and they don't really have somebody to plan with at all. And you can talk to staff, they can talk to you more about what that means. It also allows us to assign students across multiple classrooms. Having 1 or 2 strands at a grade level is very hard to balance out groups, peer groups. And I think, again, you can talk to educators about that. I know that it was very challenging when I was a principal to have to make assignments when you have, a group coming together And like, you know, the grade levels are like siblings. I mean, you have to separate them at times. And so I just think that that's an important consideration. It does allow for specialists not to have to travel, and it allows specialists, both the ones who provide all the arts and music and phys ed, to be permanent in the building, as well as itinerant staff, OTs, PTs, to be able to stay more permanently in a building instead of have to be spread out. And in our bigger elementary schools, most of their staff is there full time, as opposed to being splintered in many different places. And then it does allow for increased resource efficiency and allowing for more robust programming. This is exactly what happened when Saltonstall's middle school moved to Collins. We were able to provide middle schoolers with many more offerings because the scale was bigger for the 6 to 8 grades. It does allow the central office to shrink, the footprint of the central office, because we wouldn't be serving as many schools. We would be serving fewer sites with more students. And then obviously there's the capital dollars that have to go into maintaining buildings that you would save over time if you weren't running as many facilities. I do want to point out that as a comparison, the average size of a Massachusetts elementary school is 428 students. Okay, and you can look, the bars are our elementary schools right now. The only one that's above that is Witchcraft, and Bates is just slightly under that. So the rest of our schools are significantly below what the state average is. And then districts that have between 3,500 and 4,500 students, and we're at about 3,900 students, have on average 7.5 schools. We run 11 schools. It's a lot of schools. Now, those are choices we've made. We have multiple small high schools, we have multiple small elementary schools, but that's a lot of buildings to be running for the number of students that we serve. I do want to just talk quickly about if the school committee votes to merge a school. We have a commitment to support families and students. I think we've worked really hard, and I applaud the Saltonstall community and the Collins community who came together for the transition last year. We would have a transition team to oversee the merger, which would include families, staff, and students. We would definitely have a series of transition events to support the move. We would commit to specific resources that you need during a transition year, and I think that would be a conversation with the transition team about what you would need for extra support to help the merger happen. There would be no changes to the services for students and IEPs and 504 plans. We have a requirement to meet those obligations. That would continue to be the case, and it would be dependent on what their individual plans told us they needed. We commit to the unique traditions that the schools have. We work to figure out what those would be. We hold ourselves accountable to having metrics to monitor those, and we prioritize families. I want to be clear, I've got this question a lot, that if a family did not want to send their child to a merged school, they would have the option of choosing from the openings around the system. We do have a choice policy that allows that anyway, but we would prioritize families that would be impacted by a merger. So I want to be clear about that. And then staff. I know this is not, there are staff here, but there are a lot of questions about staff. And so the majority of the staff will have a role in the merger because staff will be following students. Those that did not have a role, if they're professional status, will continue to have a role in the Salem Public Schools because they're, by our contract, they have to have a continued role. And then we will find ways to assign staff that are in good standing, even if they're not professional status. So that means that they're less than 3 years and they are licensed, then we would help them find a place. And then we did with the Saltonstall teachers, we'd have one-to-one conversations with staff about their placement. And the goal for these, one of the things that we think is important is that to do this well, a decision of a merger would have to happen by the end of December in order for us to do the implementation well. So that ends my comments. I'm going to turn it over to our assistant superintendent, who is going to share the financials, which a lot of you have asked about, so to give you a sense of where what our financial projections are and the alternatives that we've modeled out as a district.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Pauley, and it's nice to see so many of you here this evening. If you have been in a budget presentation that I've done, you know that I believe it is always budget season. So it is budget season now for FY26, which is the year we're in, and it is budget season for FY27, which is the year we're going into. So this slide may look familiar to many of you. This slide is a slide from the spring presentation on our FY26 budget. I just cut it right out of that presentation and added it to tonight, just to ground everyone in where we are this year. So this year's appropriation, $78,173,061. That is a 4.8% increase over last year, which is about $3.5 million more that we have compared to last year. It was complicated getting this budget done, and for those of you who were part of the budget process, you'll remember that we had to look for efficiencies anywhere we could. We had to offset some of our expenses from our general fund, from that $78 million, to other revenue accounts, to grants, so that we could get down to $78 million. And you'll probably remember that we had to reduce the number of positions in the Salem Public Schools significantly, and we ended up reducing 56.5 positions. So that's where we are now. This is how we were talking about it in the spring. This is also a slide, and I promise these are the last two recycled slides, but just to show you that we got to 78 million, but when we rolled everything forward, when we started the process, our actual costs were $83 million. So we took everybody's salary and we rolled it forward, we rolled forward our expenses, and it was going to cost us $83 million. So that was about $4.9 million above where we needed to end up. So that was the experience in building this year's budget. This is small, so I will read it to you, but I wanted to show you the last four budgets. So all the way over here to the left is the FY23 budget, which the total was $66,371,924.44. 80% of that is personnel, $53 million for non-personnel, which is everything that is not attached to participation, so lights, heat, transportation, curriculum, etc. structural deficit that we saw back here. And we talked about the pandemic relief going away and our expenses rising. And so we balanced the budget using what was left of ESSER, some one-time funding, and tapping into our reserves. So we made 16 decisions, and that allowed us to balance that year. But I share this just to say, when I tell you it's complicated, it's been complicated for a few years. And then, just so you know, we're not alone. In the bottom right corner, I just took a snip of a story from Fox 25 News that says a large number of Massachusetts school districts are laying off teachers for training programs. That was from this hard budget year all around Massachusetts. And it may be a hard budget year all around Massachusetts again, because this top right snip is from Commonwealth Magazine's podcast. And their headline a few days ago was municipal budgets are breaking point. So I share that just to say it is a complex picture, and we are not alone in that. So before I turn to what I expect FY27 to look like, I wanted to just remind everyone, where does the funding for the Salem Public Schools come from? And the short answer is largely it comes from Salem. So the city of Salem is the largest funder of our budget, but we also get a significant amount of funding from what's known as Chapter 70. So Chapter 70 is the state's main vehicle for funding public education. It is a formula that looks at the number of students we have, their demographics, and our community's ability to pay for our schools. So they estimate, based on who each school district students are, how much it should cost to educate. And then they look and they consider how much can each community afford to pay. So this horizontal-ish red line is our Chapter 70 investment from the state. So in FY23, we had 26 million of our 66 million came from Chapter 70 and the state of Massachusetts. Went to 27, last year it was 29, this year it's 31 million out of our 78 million. So as you can see, Salem is our largest funder. And based on the formula, based on the Chapter 70 formula, students are making some assumptions about what that's supposed to look like. So I know I opened by saying it's always budget season, and it is, but it is still a little bit early in the FY27 budget process. So on this side of the slide, I've listed what we know about FY27. Now we have the good fortune that most of our employees are covered by collective bargaining agreements, and that our largest collective bargaining units have salary contracts. So we know the salaries for next year for most of our employees. So that really helps with forecasting what our costs are going to be. We are assuming a 3.5% increase to our non-personnel costs. Now, costs are changing all the time. That may not be right, but when I say that we know what most of the salaries are going to be, what do we assume? We assume that expenses will go up by about 3.5%. We also assume, given what I just showed you about Chapter 7, that our budget increase will be mostly from the city of Salem and also from the state. We assume that the budget increase will be consistent with what we've seen in recent years. So 5-10 years ago, the city of Salem was investing, or we were seeing a 3.1 to 3.5% increase in our budget year over year. In the last few years, we've had generous increases from the city of 4.8%. So we're assuming that that will continue to be true as we go into next year. So what don't we yet know? First, we don't really know what our Chapter 70 will be. So official Chapter 70 numbers come in January when the government releases her budget, called House 1. So we'll know in January what that will be. We can make some estimates based on our student enrollment, but the official numbers are in January. We have not settled our contract because we haven't started our negotiations yet with ASPE, who are clerical, custodial, bus, and food service workers. So we do have a union that will be pushing this year. We don't know what their salaries will be. We don't know some pretty significant expenses, what they're going to look like next year. So we sent about 55 kids or so, 50 kids each year out to certain places. These are children whose needs are better met, special education placements outside of Salem Public Schools. That is down from 5 years ago, we're sending 90 or more kids out. So we keep as many kids as we can, but some kids go out. And the cost for those placements have gone up pretty significantly in the last couple of years as those schools, just as we are experiencing cost increases. So last year, tuition for many of these increased between 8 and 14%. The year before, it was 14%. We don't yet know what the increases for next year will be. Transportation. So we have contracts for our regular day transportation, which is the kids' bus. They go to a bus stop, the kids pick the bus picks them up, takes them to school, brings them back. That contract was in January. This year we're spending about $25 million on that. We expect that to go up pretty significantly when we go out to bid. Also, our in-district special education expenses is part of that. That's another $1 million. We expect that will go up pretty significantly. And our transportation for students, families who concerns and homelessness has gone up significantly over the last few years. We're going up to bid in January because that contract has expired. So these will be, I think,
Before the mayor opens the public forum, just a reminder that we have a forum at Horace Mann on Tuesday evening, the 25th, at 6:30. We're also working on scheduling a Spanish-speaking forum where the primary language will be in Spanish and interpretation will be for English speakers. And then we'll continue to respond to questions via the Reconfiguration website and meet with family, staff, and community organizations as requested. So I'll turn it over to the mayor to open the forum.
Thanks. So for the folks who are watching at home, for the purposes of anybody here who would like to get them, the slides from this presentation are on salemk12.org/reconfiguration, which is the page that has all the content related to the study. I'm going to open this up to the public comment portion of tonight's meeting. We'd like to remind the public that Salem Public School students regularly attend school committee meetings. Therefore, we encourage all meeting participants to model respectful, productive public discourse for our young learners. The public comment period is an opportunity for the school committee to hear directly from the community and is not intended to be a debate or a question and answer period. Committee members are here to listen to comments and take in your feedback. If you have questions, we encourage you to submit them to reconfiguration@salemk12.org or ask that you share your contact information with the district staffer so we can follow up with you in response. If you wish to provide your comments in Spanish or Portuguese, please feel free to do so. We have interpreters who will translate your remarks as you give them. Please do use the microphone at the podium as it's necessary for SATV and for the people watching at home. To ensure as many people have an opportunity to speak as possible, comments should be kept to 3 minutes in length. Speakers will not be permitted to offer comments more than once this evening. However, as Dr. Schreck mentioned, we do have additional forums and public comment periods at school committee meetings, and you can reach out there through email to any of the committee members, generally or as a group. And speakers will not be able to yield time to other speakers. Speakers are going to be welcome to the podium in the order in which you signed up. So if you've not signed up yet, we do wish to provide a comment. The sign-up sheet is over there. We're going to work through the sheets in the order in which people sign up. You don't have to use your name if you don't wish to. Just when I call out whatever you put down on the sheet, please be prepared to come up to the podium and speak. And if you would prefer to share your feedback in writing, you can do so by emailing reconfiguration@salemk12.org. With that, I will start with Leah Cross.
Hello, everybody. My name is Leah Cross, and I am the mother of 2 kids who go to Bentley. I'm also a resident of the Point neighborhood. First, I want to express my appreciation. Oh, is it not on? It sounded like it's on. It's on. Okay. First, I want to express my appreciation to Dr. Zweig and the school committee for your thoughtfulness throughout this process. There we go. I don't envy the position you're in. These are incredibly difficult decisions, and conversations about our children's education are inevitably charged and emotional. I am deeply grateful for the district's commitment to maintaining and ideally expanding the dual language program. This program is extraordinary for both native Spanish speakers and Spanish learners. My daughters who are currently in pre-K and first grade are learning Spanish, but they are also learning so much more. They are growing up in classrooms that reflect a wide range of cultures and backgrounds, thanks to their peers and the incredible staff, many of whom are here tonight in support of our school community. In these classrooms, my children experience what it feels like to be in a space where white skin is not the majority. They understand what it means to communicate in a second language they have not yet mastered. They watch their Spanish-speaking peers take on leadership roles. They learn daily about the diversity of our city and about building meaningful connections across cultural differences. I could not be more proud of them, and I'm profoundly grateful for a program that enriches their education as much as it supports the underserved population it is designed to uplift. I also want to recognize Liz Rogers, who's also here. Her leadership is exceptional, and we are incredibly fortunate to have her guiding this program as principal. I hope that Bentley families' voices are truly heard, especially when communities with greater privilege may have the time, resources, or confidence to be louder. Many of my Spanish-speaking neighbors in the Point have had limited awareness of this process and less clarity about how to share their perspectives. I'm glad to hear, based on Dr. Zweig's recent email to a fellow Bentley parent, that additional outreach to the Latino community is planned and that there's a Spanish forum planned. Unfortunately, despite high demand for the program, expansion of the dual language program is not possible within the current configuration of Bentley and the ECC. For this reason, I support moving the dual language program to Saltonstall. If it remains a wall-to-wall model, as is supported by research, Saltonstall's additional space would allow for expansion, and its location is closer to many Bentley families living in the Point. It is also important to acknowledge that Bentley is the only elementary building in the district that has not been modernized, an especially troubling reality given that it serves the highest proportion of BIPOC and high-need students. Every child in our city deserves to learn in a modern, updated school. I believe deeply in equity, and it is one of the reasons I love Salem, because this community believes in equity too. The dual language program is a vital part of the district's efforts to provide equitable educational opportunities, and I urge you to make decisions that allow for it not only to survive, but to grow. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Melinda Baker. I'm a parent, a PTO co-president, a full-time working professional, and a Salem homeowner. Tonight, I'm speaking not just for myself, but for a large and diverse group of caregivers who have been working intensely to understand and respond to the consolidation process. As you listen this evening, I urge you to consider two words: intent and impact. You may have intended transparency and meaningful engagement, but the impact has been the exact opposite. Families have felt confused, rushed, duped, discarded, blindsided, and left without the information needed to meaningfully engage during one of the most consequential decisions that this district has faced. If the planning truly started years ago, as several officials have publicly stated, then the rollout we have witnessed simply would not have happened. A major proposal would never have been released without a clear, organized communication plan. Committee members would not be making public statements that require frequent clarifications or corrections. The consultant's full fact base would not have been released a full week after the initial presentation. And basic analyses and things like traffic, walkability, building impacts, and the educational models would not still be in progress or being reevaluated as caregivers point out gaps in the methodology within minutes of reviewing any of the materials. These are not minor oversights. They are systematic breakdowns that call the entire process into question. And they explain why so many in this community are asking for a pause, asking why now, or struggling to trust the information that is being presented. Adding to the confusion, we learned only recently that a vote to do nothing is in fact an available option, even though this was never communicated publicly as part of the process. Families have been operating under the assumption that a school must close or merge next year, because that is how the information was presented to us. Introducing a new option only after weeks of community concern further reinforces the perception that key details are being withheld or shared only after we've questioned. So I close with this. The most significant impact of the past few weeks has been a profound erosion of trust. Trust in this process and the assumption that families are being treated as partners rather than obstacles. If the district wants to rebuild that trust, it must slow down, correct course, and commit to a process that matches the seriousness of this decision. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lila Hauk, and I'm the mother of 2 Carleton students, grade 5 and 2, and I have a number of concerns about the proposed school reconfiguration and the negative effects that could have on my family personally. Drop-off and pickup time and coordination with me and my husband's work schedules, the possible loss of farm school, and other unique features that Carleton offers their students, upheaval of our close-knit community, and of course, the disruption of my younger son's education. Aside from the effects on me and my family personally, I share many of the concerns that you will hear from other parents here tonight. The seeming hastiness of the consolidation plans and the possible short-sightedness that may go with it. I'm concerned that by solving one problem, it's going to just open the door to a laundry list of other financial problems and logistical problems. I'm concerned about overflowing classrooms, more children in fewer buildings, and less administrative support for the amount of children in those buildings are things that come to mind. As for school choice, my question is, where is the choice as the schools blend together and become similar in size? Will they be losing their unique traits, such as Carleton's innovation models or Bentley's dual language program? I feel personally that larger schools are not always better. I understand there's statistics that could support kind of any angle on the topic, but for us, my eldest started at Witchcraft, and it was just a very overwhelming environment being in such a big school with so many people, as being kind of a sensory sensitive kid, and going to Carleton, like the moment you walked in, it was so different because it was so small and calm in a way I personally have never witnessed an elementary school feel before. I also wanted to speak tonight because I myself experienced a school merger and reconfiguration when I was in 6th grade. It was disruptive and messy, not only academically, but socially and emotionally. At this point in my children's education, at the elementary age, I value most their social and emotional development, which I think we can all agree has already been rocked by the pandemic. And any school counselor that you ask, I'm sure would agree with that. I think these consolidation plans are asking too much of both children and parents to be resilient on the heels of the pandemic, which many families are still recovering from. If there's no way forward but consolidation, I hope that we can at least slow the process to ensure the best outcomes for everyone. Listening to Ms. Pauly's financial information, I found it interesting that there's a lot of answers that will come maybe in January, like numbers we don't know yet. So I feel like if we could at least push off a decision until maybe we have that information in January. A final thought I would like to share is that I've already heard talk of parents moving their kids to different districts with smaller schools, and being that Salem is kind of socioeconomically diverse, there's a lot of parents that choose to send their kids to the public schools here, but they could, if they want, make the decision to go private. And I'm concerned that if a reconfiguration goes through, there would be a significant drop in enrollment, which is to the detriment of everyone involved. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Megan Stacio. I am a parent of a 7th grader at Collins Middle School and a 3rd and 1st grader here at Saltonstall. I want to start by telling you about our school. Where we are sitting tonight is where we hold our amazing band and music programs, and where our students come together to build community engagement. Saltonstall isn't just a building, it's an extension of our home. The people that make up our school make it special. Our facilities and cafeteria team take such good care of our students by making sure they are safe and well fed. Our teachers and administration make sure our children are loved, listened to, and taught with respect. Saltonstall has gone through many phases over the years. We've had multi-grade classrooms, year-round model, school-wide multiple intelligence practices, Friday clubs supported by community volunteers, and most recently, the loss of our middle school. Last year's decision to take away our middle school came as a shock to many of our families. It also was a very fast decision that was implemented in under a year. Many of our families are still upset about this change in our school structure. Families chose Saltonstall for these unique pieces, and with every change, our community has worked hard to adapt and maintain our Salt's pride. But adapting takes time. Changing our school home again so soon doesn't give us the chance to settle into our new K-5 identity. I also want to point out that right now, many of our families are already under a lot of stress. Stress about food, about personal safety, and about finances, especially as the holidays are approaching. Introducing another major change at this moment feels unthoughtful and honestly a little dismissive of what families are dealing with. My hope is that when this process comes to an end, we can look at our school community and feel confident that the decision was made with care, with thoughtfulness, and with a true understanding of what Saltonstall means to the children and families who rely on it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie D'Amico. I'm a Salem Public Schools parent, a social worker, and child therapist. And like Melinda, who spoke before me, I've come here tonight to represent not only myself, but also a large group of caregivers who've been thinking critically about this reconfiguration process. To start, I want to acknowledge that as parents, we put our trust in this school system every day, and that trust has been damaged in the last 2 weeks. If I could just provide one example that really set the tone, I would want to acknowledge that in meetings prior to November 3rd, parents were told that you were engaging consultants to explore co-locations and 1 to 5 year reconfiguration timelines. But then on November 3rd, we all listened to consultants present proposals to close a school next year. The lack of acknowledgement of that difference makes us concerned that you aren't fully considering the sacrifices that you are asking our children to make. In my job as a therapist, if I were to ask a child to draw a picture of their school, the first thing they're going to draw is the building and then some key people, principals, teachers, friends, other adults they see every day. In the case of a co-location, we are erasing the building in that picture, right? It still looks pretty similar. They still identify it as their school. In the case of a merger, we're erasing a lot more from that picture, so much more so that our children aren't going to recognize that as their school anymore. Their school is closed. A school closure is a huge loss to the children, teachers, and parents of that community, and that that loss needs to be recognized by this committee. I understand the temptation to use softer language like merger, but doing so invalidates the experiences of the school communities involved and further erodes our trust in the system. These proposals assume that school communities are closed systems, and we know that that is not true, especially with our school choice program in Salem. There are so many systems aspects to consider that we don't yet have information about. We have no idea how many parents are considering switching schools, what impact the innovation model has on that, and what the influx will look like at the remaining elementary schools. We have no idea how many families are considering leaving the district and how that will affect the budget next year. We have no idea how teachers will react and whether teachers with more seniority will request positions in schools that seem more stable, or if teachers are already considering leaving the district. We have no idea how pre-K families feel about enrolling in what will be the largest elementary school in Salem. We have no idea how all the voluntary dispersing will affect the demographics of this new school. Will we end up with less experienced teachers and a student body with higher needs? Perhaps, most importantly, we have no idea if acting on this accelerated timeline will negatively affect our district's reputation and make it even more challenging to fill positions. School committee members Campbell and Hoffman, I heard you last night when you said that hearing from families helps you gather better information. I agree that qualitative data is very important, but quantitative data is also necessary to understand the scope of the problem. We can't make informed decisions without all the data. Parents hear you when you say that you have budget shortfalls and space utilization issues, right? We hear school committee member Cruz that there needs to be further advocacy on the state level for Chapter 70 funding. Please hear us when we ask you to put our children's well-being and the well-being of the district first and wait until you have all the information before making a decision. Please don't close first and plan later. Thank you.
My name is Sarah Cisnowski, and I'm here to speak in strong opposition to the proposed closure of Carleton Innovation School. For my family, this school is not just a building. It's the heart of the community, of our community, and the center of our daily lives. One of the greatest strengths of Carleton is that it's walkable. My children walk to school safely every day. That simple routine builds independence, healthy habits, and a sense of connection with our neighbors. Losing our neighborhood school would completely change the rhythm of our families' lives and the lives of so many others. It would create transportation burdens and disconnect children from the community they're growing up in. Another reason this school is so important to us is its innovation model. This approach has been incredibly effective for my children, especially my eldest daughter. She receives the individualized support she needs right in her classroom, so much so that we have never needed a 504 plan. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because the teachers at Carleton know their students. They see them as individuals, and they have the time and capacity to give each child what they need. My biggest fear is what will happen if she's moved to a much larger school. In a setting with hundreds more students, it's hard to imagine she could receive the same level of attention. I worry she would simply become a number, lost in the crowd, and that the progress she has made would be at real risk. My connection to Carleton and this neighborhood goes back decades. My husband and I both grew up there, and we intentionally chose to stay and raise our family in the same neighborhood, in the community that shaped us. Both of our parents still live in the same neighborhoods. That means 3 generations of our family are tied to the neighborhood and to Carleton. Closing it would break a connection that has strengthened this community for years. And finally, closing Carleton would have real consequences for the neighborhood itself. Strong local schools support stable communities and healthy property values. Removing a neighborhood school makes it harder for families to stay and harder for new families to want to come. For all these reasons, family, education, community, and continuity, I respectfully ask you to reconsider the proposal to close Carleton. Thank you for your time and listening to the families who are directly affected by this decision.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Dr. Christina Porter. I'm the parent of 2 daughters, one at Saltonstall and one at Collins. I'm also a lifelong urban educator, now in my 24th year, currently as a district administrator and a professor of educational leadership at Salem State. I share that only to give the context to the lens that I bring to you tonight, both as a parent and as someone who's spent her career leading in urban public education. I'm speaking tonight in strong support of keeping Saltonstall open. In saying that, I want to acknowledge that there is no easy decision here. While I'm advocating for my own children's school community, I'm fully aware that other families at other buildings who are here tonight are also worried, also watching this process closely, and will certainly feel the impact of any final decision. We all want what is best for our children, and any option before you will affect multiple communities. I say this with a deep empathy for every family sitting here in uncertainty right now. With that said, I want to lift up something that often gets overlooked when we talk about reconfiguration. Saltonstall has an exceptional teaching and leadership staff. These educators have already endured one major transition with the abrupt closure of the middle school last year. They managed that upheaval with professionalism, consistency, and extraordinary care for students. The fact that Saltonstall remains a warm, calm, academically focused community after such a disruption is a direct reflection of the skill and commitment of the adults in this building. As someone who trains future administrators, I can tell you that Saltonstall's staff exemplifies what the research calls collective teacher efficacy, the single most impactful school-based factor influencing student learning. When educators trust one another, believe in their shared capacity to meet students' needs, and are aligned in their purpose, student outcomes rise. Districts spend years trying to cultivate what already exists in this school. Once that kind of staff culture is destabilized, you don't easily rebuild it. As a parent, I see every day how deeply these teachers and staff know and support their students. As an educator, I see a school where children feel safe, seen, and successful. That's not something that we should disrupt lightly. There are also significant equity implications here. The pace of these decisions, as has been mentioned by many other parents tonight, risks leaving behind the very families who need the most support to participate. Multilingual families, families working multiple jobs, or families who don't have experience navigating district processes. If we truly value equity, our process should reflect that. Finally, we all know the reality. When public schools shrink, more families turn to charter schools, which in turn reduces funding for the district. Closing Saltonstall or any of these other schools would unintentionally strengthen that dynamic. Tonight, I'm asking you to pause and recognize the strength of what already exists in these schools. Let's look for solutions that preserve what is working while still acknowledging and addressing the fiscal needs that underlie this process. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Jim, and I'm a parent of 2 kids at Carleton. I want to speak to you specifically today about the innovation model, because there's lots of different reasons that will be spoken about in terms of why this is important, but I want to drill down on just the Carleton innovation model. And to use my kids as a case study, my oldest son, he had just turned 5 when we had the open house at Carleton, and he was a little 5-year-old. He'd always been a very intellectual little guy. He knew that there was power in asking people how things worked and listening to their answers. But I was still really nervous. He was a little guy at that time, and I told him, buddy, we don't have to do this if you don't want to. We can do something different for the rest of your year. But he said that he wanted to do it. And it's been the best thing for him. He's been challenged, he's thrived, he's grown. And I'm proud to say that he'll be going into the equivalent of 3rd grade just this week, essentially. My daughter started at this last year. She is now a kindergartner at Carleton. And everybody who has kids know that if you do exactly the same parenting, even with 2 different kids, and it's just a mystery as to why that is. Whereas my son found power in asking people how things worked and listening, she finds power in not believing them and thinking perhaps it's the exact opposite. She takes more time. She's not as focused. She needs a little extra help. And I have to say, my son and my daughter, they are both thriving at Carleton. They're doing great. And I think that's a story that a lot of parents will echo from Carleton. The innovation model really works. And Dr. Zreich, I appreciate you saying yesterday, and I appreciate you saying today that you are committed in whatever process takes place, that you'll be keeping that innovation model intact. I am concerned that I haven't seen a plan as to how that would occur in whatever scenario we see laid out. And in fact, I think that that's a big enough concern that before I'd be comfortable as a Salem resident or in any event, knowing how this is going to preserve that model in much, much different contexts based on this move. You've said that you like perhaps even expanding the Carleton model, and I think that's also great to hear. But I'd kind of put the brakes on that one, to be honest with you, because Carleton only works because we have full school buy-in. And asking somebody to do the Carleton innovation model as a parent, as an educator, it's a commitment. It's a commitment to a lot of transition, not just transition in the year, but transition in the day. And I don't think it works if we don't all fully commit to it and believe in it the way that we are right now. And I don't want to force that on somebody else either. So I'm speaking today in hopes that if we do this merger, if there is a plan moving forward, it needs to be a plan. It needs to be something where we have all of the data in front of us. And I'm speaking in favor of keeping this innovation model that has benefited my family and the other families in Carleton so deeply. Thank you.
deciphering of handwriting.
Borshow Eunice? No? Borshow?
It's not Bora.
I don't know what that's name either. Got me.
All right, if we can decipher, we'll come back to it. Daisy. After Daisy, we have Erica Giardina.
Hope you can hear me. Ooh, maybe too loud, sorry. Hi, my name is Daisy Wisda. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and for presenting the information that's been shared over the past few weeks, I would say. But I start off by saying, as a parent that I feel tries to make an effort to get informed about what's going on in the community, I do feel, as a Carleton parent, as a Salem parent, that a lot of information that was happening that has been presented online sort of does feel like it was in the background. It wasn't as easy for parents to find. And I just want to share that I feel like that is why there is a lot of, high emotion and concern from us parents about a huge change that will affect our kids. Based on the assistant superintendent's presentation earlier, I still feel concerned about, there was a lot of information shared that is helpful in setting us up to where we are now, but as a parent, I don't see what we're going to do in the future state to help our elementary kiddos to not continue to experience lack of staff, teacher cuts year after year, and that's a big worry for someone like me and my family. I'll share, I have 2 kids at Carleton. My oldest is in 3rd grade, so if he were to move to another location, that's a transition 2 years before moving on to middle school. We actually transferred him into the district from a private school because social learning is a big part of his need, and he was not meeting that there, but he's meeting at Carleton, and that's why we feel so passionate as Carleton parents about our community. So again, that social learning is just as important for us as the academics. And I will ask that, when a decision is made, please consider our children who are not as easy to adjust to change and transition. So I have heard commentary that children are resilient. Yes, many are, but many in our community have challenges that are not visible on the surface, my child included. So any sort of transition that may seem, not as disruptive to some, behind the scenes on a daily basis, my son is already hearing about these potential changes, and it's causing anxiety with the children, lots of children here. As Sarah said, another benefit from Carleton that we've experienced is not needing to document our child's learning challenges. We don't have a 504 plan in place because he's benefited from a smaller classroom, and that is something that may change. And I know I'm speaking for myself, but speaking with others, there are others that also have, those same concerns. So please keep the kids in mind when you're making decisions, and thank you.
Okay. Good evening, members of the school board. Thank you for allowing us to have our say this evening. My name is Erica Giardina, and I am a parent of a child at Saltonstall. I'm here tonight because I'm deeply concerned about the decision to merge students from one school to another. I feel this decision is being rushed without a fully developed plan that considers the impacts on all families directly involved. For example, many parents, including myself, rely on after-school programs such as the Boys and Girls Club, which is located on site at Saltonstall. Moving students without coordinating with the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA risks forcing parents to make difficult adjustments, including potentially sending children on buses for after-school care or shouldering unexpected financial burdens. I joined the Salem school system last year and did extensive research to find the best fit for my daughter. Saltonstall rose to the top for many reasons. Its convenient later start times, its financially accessible on-site after-school care, its grade structure through junior high, and the manageable commute from South Salem. But what truly impressed me was the warm welcome from Principal Jellison on the day I took a tour of the school. She greeted me in her Character Day costume and conducted the tour herself, answering questions and providing details about the school. From there, it was the engaging teachers and the school's inclusive culture that confirmed that Saltonstall is not only just a school, it is a community where my daughter feels safe, supported, and valued. Last year, one reason I chose Saltonstall was taken away when the middle schoolers were moved to Collins. Now, with this proposed merger, I worry about disrupting my daughter's sense of stability and comfort, upending my work schedule, and taking on additional financial and logistical burdens for the after-school program. Most importantly, my daughter has grown to love her school, her teachers, and the principal, the heart and soul of Saltonstall pride. I urge the board to carefully consider all of these factors before finalizing this decision. The impact on families, students, and the supportive environment that makes schools like Saltonstall special must not be overlooked. Thank you for your time and for listening to the perspective of parents who deeply care about their children's education and well-being. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Megan McGough Christian, and I'm a Saltonstall parent. As a citizen of Salem, I am disappointed and frankly embarrassed at the way the reconfiguration process has been conducted. This is causing stress and pain for Salem parents at a vulnerable time. We should be focused on keeping all our neighbors safe, fed, and supported during the darkest time of the year. Instead, we have been pitted against each other to defend our school communities. Hours have been spent by parents trying to understand the numbers and options. While I respect this enthusiasm, I cannot help but wish that this energy could have been directed toward these other urgent issues we're facing as a community. I expect the school committee, and especially you, Mayor Pangallo and Representative Cruz, to ensure that processes like reconfiguration are conducted in a way that does not do harm to the community. What we've witnessed instead is confusion and rumors, delayed publication of assets, adversarial comments within the community, expressions of discomfort at the undue haste, and deepening mistrust in the district and the city. That so many parents were surprised at reconfiguration indicates a failure to achieve the level of communication that issues of this scale demand. Clearly, the committee and the district are aware of the difference between information being public and publicized, as evidenced by the commendable outreach for the high school project. The timeline for that project has also been more reasonable. In the elementary school process, however, we still have uncertainty. Some responses provided by the committee and district seem to contradict other statements or publicly available information. The timing of your feedback period in November and December is contrary to most professional advice in community research. The framing and presentation of the consultant's report was baffling to anyone familiar with consultancy. Whatever the origin of each of these issues, together they undermine confidence in your transparency and the intentions of this process. At this point, I implore you to pause, reflect, and revisit this issue in the future with the reasonable timeline, clear, multilingual communication, and transparency our children deserve. If you must continue like this, I ask that you keep Saltonstall here. Saltonstall is a school open to all at every grade level with a tremendous heart and a diverse and engaged student body. We have already borne the brunt of the district's piecemeal approach to reconfiguration, and we are slated to experience more pain in the majority of these scenarios. Our first choice is to keep Saltonstall home for our children, just as it is today. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rita. My 5-year-old daughter started kindergarten at Carleton Innovation School in September. My family's been in Salem for the last 3 years. Before moving here, we looked carefully at school systems within commuting distance to Boston. It was important to me that my daughter go to school in a culturally diverse community, but it was equally important to me to find a small neighborhood school that we could walk to. We were so excited when she was accepted to join Carleton. It was our top choice because it's walkable, because the start time works well for us, and most importantly, because it has a stellar reputation in our community. It's our neighborhood school. My daughter loves it. At 2.5 months in, she's thriving. She's developed by leaps and bounds in that short time. She's excited to go to school every day. If her school closes, she'll be facing a hard transition next fall, when she otherwise would have been returning to a place that she now knows and loves. School closures are bad for kids. There's data to support this, and I can email citations. It's not that it's just hard in the short term. Some kids recover within a few years after a transition like this. But new research shows that the negative impacts of school closures can actually affect kids well past graduation, in the form of lower test scores and even impacting future careers. School closures are also bad for kids' families and the neighborhoods that surround a closed school. Let's also not forget that this is the same generation of elementary school kids who've just suffered through a global pandemic at various critical formative ages. We should be protecting these kids from avoidable traumas. Closing a school solves for a small portion of a much larger budget deficit. But in multiple scenarios, the consultant's proposals suggested using a vacated school building as an early childhood center. There was no funding plan to accompany that suggestion. It's just simply unclear how a school closure at this time will serve the city's long-term vision for public schools when it doesn't even solve the budget crisis. It would be one thing if a particular merger made sense as the first step in a long-term plan to balance the budget and create sustainability in the system. But the long-term plan to achieve these goals is not apparent and hasn't been made apparent. There's no clear case being made that the potential benefits of a closure will outweigh the very real and lasting harm to kids, families, and the neighborhoods surrounding a closed school. I would urge you to extend the 12/15 deadline and use the time to work with the community on a long-term plan to balance the budget. Let's harness the power of community activism to aggressively pursue other forms of revenue, including an increase in Chapter 70 funding. As you can see, we're engaged. We're here, we're ready to work towards solutions. We owe our kids a thoughtful and well-planned process. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Marin Giuliano. I am the parent of a P1 student at the Carleton who loves school more than you can possibly know. I thank you for having me here tonight, and I do just want to highlight one quick thing before I get into my talking points here, which is many of you sitting at the table right here, respectfully, were elected by us to represent us, and we feel that you failed us. You see the people in the room tonight, and we need you to support us in better ways with better planning, please, for our families. I'm supposed to be talking about traffic, but as Dr. Reich pointed out, we've heard a lot about traffic already and the problems with traffic and, what kind of cars. Everybody drives a Subaru here, whatever. Our aim is to highlight, our aim being the Carleton community and the Salem Public Schools community here, is to highlight the challenges for all Salem Public Schools families that may not have been given full consideration during the process of creating school reconfiguration options. A significant factor is traffic patterns and flow in Salem, which we strongly believe will be negatively impacted by moving the Carleton students to Saltonstall or Horace Mann. Having reviewed a December 2024 traffic study, we found the following. The study was conducted during an unusually low traffic week. I can say from personal experience, and I'm sure many people here might agree, have you ever tried to drive from the Market Basket on Highland Ave down towards the Commons in September or October? Yeah, how'd that work out for you? Not well. How about trying to go on Lafayette around 3 o'clock whenever the Saltonstall gets out? Any time of year. Exactly. All right. The traffic counts that were taken on December 12th and December 16th, immediately after Salem State University's last day of fall classes on December 11th, do not accurately represent the flow of traffic during high traffic times here. Salem State's the third largest employer in Salem, which influences daily traffic across the Highland, Wilson, and Loring corridor. And because the study was conducted during this quiet period, the measured volumes do not reflect typical conditions. Quick side note, I once participated in a traffic study in a very popular ski resort town in Vermont. You know when we did the study? At the height of ski season. That's what makes sense. The study uses the wrong start time for HMLS. I think we've been over this, so I'm not going to belabor that point. And only 2 days of data were collected, both in December. Again, I'm not going to belabor this point. We want to make sure that we are looking at all the factors here. I grew up in a heavily populated resort area on Cape Cod, and I live in Salem now, and I'm happy to be here, but we do have a very high season here, and I think we all need to recognize that and how it impacts our city overall. City Safety Action Plan identifies Wilson Street and its Highland Avenue feeders as priority corridors. For example, Wilson Street, Highland Ave to Champlain Street is listed as an arterial collector corridor, and streets feeding into Highland, including Proctor, Marlborough, and Valley Street, are also designated as priority corridors. Again, high volume traffic. I want to share a quick personal note. I hope I have time to do this. A large part of my husband and I's decision to send our son to the Carleton was based on proximity. We moved to Salem because of its walkability and access to significant cultural and natural resources. We didn't want the suburbs. I could have moved up to West Newbury with my sister-in-law. I didn't want to do that. I want to be somewhere where there's a diverse, amazing community of people, and seeing so many familiar faces in this room tonight is really getting me kind of emotional. We didn't want to live in a place where you have to drive everywhere to get anywhere. My child rides his bike on the path that leads from the bottom of our street right up to the Carleton. You should see the pride in his face each day as he gets better and better at riding his bike. The joy that lights up his smile when we meet up with his best friend, who happens to be Rita's daughter, on the bike path, and they ride their bikes to school together. The way he and his friends greet each other with laughter and smiles and shouts of happiness when we arrive at school in our close-knit community neighborhood school. If his school, which he loves dearly, merges with another school, he will be a number, a tiny face in a sea of faces. I never want to see that look on his face that tells me that he has lost, alone, or scared, or that his confidence has faded because of these feelings. I know he's far from the only child, and his father and I are far from the only parents who will be devastated by this proposed reconfiguration. I ask you, respectfully, to please reconsider the options to close the Carlton and take them off the table. Thank you very much.
I guess you're next then. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Jennifer McGregor. I am not as eloquent as so many of you have been tonight, and I really appreciate everything everybody has said. I have always been really proud of Dr. Reich's transparency throughout my tenure as a parent in Salem. I think that I'm a little disappointed at the transparency that or the lack of transparency that we've all suffered in this situation. I think bringing parents and caregivers into the conversation a lot earlier would have been really helpful. And I'll give you the example. I'm a former Carlton parent. My daughter's in middle school right now, but I'm the parent of 2 Henny Penny students right now, which Mayor Pangolo has recently told me that he is an alumni of Henny Penny. And in May of this past year, Henny Penny announced that they were going to be closing their doors after 65 years. And I know this doesn't sound related in any way, shape, or form to what we're going through, but it is, because the parents at Henny Penny said, no, we're not going to deal with that. We're not going to do that. This is really special to us. It's special to Salem. It's the longest running preschool in the North Shore. Our dear mayor went there, and we need to fix this. And what can we do? And parents, several parents that are here tonight, they saved it. Henny Penny is saved because of, caregivers in Salem, and that's what we do. That's our thing, man. You need to bring us into the conversation earlier. This group is like a group of problem solvers and fixers. That's what we do. We fix our kids' boo-boos. We fix our kids' problems. We fix our budgets. We fix our friends' problems. We listen, and we resolve matters. So this is why it's so important to have parents involved, parents and caregivers involved in these decisions. And that's why it's important that we're brought in. There should be a committee. There should be something where we're involved, because we are a group of problem solvers. And, granted, God only knows how much money was spent on this assessment that probably non-Salem people, were paid to do. And, and I'm sure that's part of, that was taken out of the budget. On a side note, my taxes have doubled in the last 7 years. Why isn't more money from our taxes being allocated to school resources for our kids? I can't be the only one. The amount of money coming into Salem, the amount of gentrification happening is outrageous. We should at least be able to use some of it to our, to our children and our future's benefit, because, there are 2-bedroom condos going for $1 million. Why isn't that money going to our schools? That's one thought. I'm hoping that the Bentley, we don't have Bentley kids as of yet, but I was really, really hoping that my little blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy would be, fluent in Spanish. We need to give our kids a chance at a second language or a third language or a fourth language at an earlier age. And Bentley is the only school in the game doing that right now. And it's nearly criminal in 2025 that in Salem to boot, that a second language, third language, fourth language is only starting in 7th grade, which is how it was a million years ago when I was in middle school. And I feel like we should do better. We should do better for our kids to give them, a leg up in the workforce by giving them the ability to have a foreign language or have a second language or a third language and such. As a Carlton parent, or a former Carlton parent, and hopefully a future Carlton parent, the parking lot fundraiser at our school makes, $30,000 to $40,000, and I know that that's a funny thing to bring up in a time like this, but it's provides all the school supplies, all the events, all the field trips, all the school activities are totally free for kids. So that takes every kid in the Carleton school system, and it gives them a chance to be included, and it gives them a chance to not be left out of a school field trip that they can't go to because they don't have the $10 or $15 for transportation and lunch. So I think that that's something that definitely needs to be said. Solutions. I know that, my house is really expensive to keep up. We did like a mass save energy audit, and we have so much, we're insulating and we're doing LED lights. Would you like to say something? Oh, okay. Got it. Well, in conclusion, I feel like we can do better with transparency, and I think that I'm not the only one to say that tonight. Transparency and language. I don't think we need as many graphs as much as we need to just be included. Thank you. Huh? Okay, thank you.
All right, Shelley. Good evening. So we'll try not to just repeat what everyone else has said. I want to start by thanking you all, especially the committee, superintendent. I know it's not easy on a Monday night. I think at the end of the day, being in government, it sometimes is difficult because you did meet in open, you followed the open meeting law. For better or for worse, a lot of us had no idea this was going on. Some of that, I'll take it personally. I didn't know. I didn't go on your website. I didn't read your minutes. I didn't know. You did it in public, but up until 2 weeks ago, no clue. Now, I get more emails from you than I get from any other commercial store trying to sell me things. You're doing a great job now, and I hope you've learned about it for the future. We're Carleton parents. Our son has actually gone through the entire Carleton program and is about to graduate from it in this following spring. So what you do tonight isn't going to directly impact us. However, I do feel it's important to know that really Carleton is a special place, but I think what we're hearing tonight is that all these schools are special. They're all unique. I'm not here to tell you Carleton's better than Saltonstall. I don't know the Saltonstall program. I know that for us, we live in North Salem. We could have walked to Bates, but we chose Carleton for its program. And it's done fantastically for our son. However, at the end of the day, we get it. There's budget issues. But I think, from what I'm hearing from those slides, you've got millions of dollars that you're going to have to address, and maybe save $3 million one year, $1 million the following. This isn't going to fix the problem. What is going to fix the problem is tougher, and I think this whole group wants to help you with that. It doesn't need to be divisive. Again, you're all doing a great job. We do appreciate it. At least I do. And I don't think, to a certain extent, the issues can be solved overnight, but I know at the end of the day, we want to work with you and we want to help. But in order to do that, we need all the data. And we want to go through all of it because we think that closing a school is the worst case scenario. That's the thing you want to avoid at all costs because you will kill off something that's special if you do. But in the meantime, I think we have time. From what I've seen, there is an ability for you to use these new resources, get us together, let us look into it, let us address this funding issue with the state, let us call our reps, let us try to address it too. I think one of the beauties of living in Salem is we have so many good resources. We have a fantastic rep. Heck, one of our great mayors is the lieutenant governor now. I think there are resources out there, we just haven't explored them all. And if we have to close a school, I think there do need to be a lot more information other than just how much you save. Because again, each one of these schools is special. And if you closed one, maybe you're closing the best school in Salem. I may think it's Carleton, but some other people might think it's Bentley or Saltonstall or any of the others. And you know what? We need the data before you can say that. And unfortunately, if you make the decision without that data, then you are making a mistake. So please, we ask, work your hardest, but don't make a rash decision in next month. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jen Inglis, and I am a current Collins parent, former Carleton, and I was going to speak about traffic, and then I changed my mind, and now I'm going to do it again, because I think having a kid who was in Carleton and is now at Collins actually relates to this conversation, because getting her to school or picking her up from school now is a disaster. When you go from a commute from 5 to 15 minutes when you're on that side of town, dropping your kid off at either Bentley or Carleton, and now you have to cross the city. And we all know what that's like, but it's literally sometimes an hour round trip to go from our side of the common to Collins. I can't even imagine the extra 10 minutes it would be to have to go to Horace Mann in the morning or the afternoon. So anyway, that aside, I have 2 decades of municipal experience running institutions, including with the city of Boston and many towns. So I'm very familiar with the municipal funding situation, and I appreciated the budget presentation. I understood that. I understand that budgets are tight. I understand that tough decisions have to be made. But one of the things that was brought up was the issue of 55 point whatever positions, and that the positions aren't always people, but some of them are people. And when we cut positions and this merger of schools, some of these positions are going to have to be cut in order for there to be a cost saving. These are real people. These are people who have impact on our kids. Last year at Carleton, several teachers' contracts were not renewed, and it was devastating for those kids who had those teachers. And they would not have fit into the slideshow that the superintendent gave us with 3 years of experience and licensure. They're under that cut. Some of the best teachers and staff we have in Salem are people who aren't yet under that tenure. So I just want to say that positions are sometimes people. The next piece I want to say is that I always assume best intent. I am a Salem cheerleader. I believe that all of you have the best intentions, but you are hearing from all of us that this was handled poorly. And it is disingenuous of you all to say that this is something that we all should have just known about because you've been working on it. You might have been working on it, but we weren't informed. And this is a really big problem in communication. It is a problem in support. It is just really awful and not something that I would expect from Salem. We love Salem. I mean, all of us chose this place for a reason. So thank you for your understanding. I hope you reconsider this rush to a decision, next month. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Tim Simrell. I am a parent at Saltonstall. I can reiterate a lot of points that all of the other parents have brought up. I'll try in the interest of time to, keep it even shorter. First, I want to appreciate the school board. I know this isn't an easy decision. I know that you have a lot of things that you have to figure out and wrestle with when it comes to budget, and deficits are never easy. And I'm saying that as the son of a 30-year public school teacher who notoriously was adversarial to her school board. So I'm going to do a little better than that. I really also appreciate all of the comments from the parents. from every school, and I thought it was really great to hear the point about how all of the Salem schools are special and all of them have something that is really, really unique and important to those families. One of the points that I want to make is that as a member of the PTO at Saltonstall, talked to a lot of Saltonstall parents, there's a feeling that Saltonstall has been sort of in the crosshairs for a lot of this process. Last year, in the fall, we heard that our middle school was closing despite all the great work that our new principal has done. This spring, Saltonstall, along with Witchcraft Heights, had lost a proportionally higher number of FTEs, not related to the middle school closure. And then this fall, where Saltonstall is proportionally higher on the school committee's list of recommended decisions. So they feel generally targeted, and at this point we're wondering what's going to come next year. What's the decision that's going to impact us that we haven't heard about? Is there a master plan that needs to be shared more? On the November 3rd meeting, there was a point that was raised that Saltonstall is not a choice school as a top 1, 2, or 3 choice for 34% of the parents in the South Salem neighborhood, which I don't understand the statistic because 66% do choose Saltonstall. So I think that that's another one that's weird to hear that that's a point for the school committee to consider. So given that, I want to just reiterate the points. A lack of a full traffic study or accurate traffic study after the middle school shift that took place, which we didn't get that traffic study until the middle school changed. That's going to affect the traffic, even though Collins, is close enough. I think it will. And then the loss of, or the impact to the after-school programs, it should be really considered. The impact or potential loss of important pedagogical methods, such as the Carleton Innovation Program. Though I'm not there, I really appreciate how important that is. All deserve more, deeper consideration from the school board. But thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Rolk, resident of Salem. I have my son is in 3rd grade at Carleton, and my daughter just went to kindergarten at the Carleton school. And one thing that we're constantly trying to do in our house is have some gratitude in this situation, and it's gratitude that we have a school that's this important to us, and a school that we're this upset about, and we're upset. And eventually that gratitude gives way to frustration and confusion, and that's mainly focused on how this process has gone. And I'm not knowledgeable about running a school system, and I'm not knowledgeable about the overall city budget, and what I tend to do is try to equate things to things that I do understand. And if this was a business, and these are your customers writing reviews, every single customer has said your business doesn't communicate well. And it's not a good sign for the business. And if everyone's saying one thing, like you're the one that needs to change. And we as a group feel that this process has been extremely rushed. There was a bullet point committing to a community engagement and involvement, but that was overtly shown to us 2 weeks ago, and the decision's less than a month away. And that's hasty, and haste makes waste. There's no way that a decision made that fast can definitely be the best one when there's information that we're asking for, and none of it can really be provided. It's only that an effort will be made to have the merger go well, should that be what we decide. Like, what does an effort mean? What happens to my kid? What happens to my children when they get engaged in this? And it's upsetting. And if I looked over my fence tomorrow morning and my neighbor was building an addition on their house, and I said, hey, what are you doing? And they said, oh, we've been planning this for a while. There's a pause that I can enact through the city to stop them from building until we know the effects that'll have on our property. And we're asking you to give that same pause, because the effects that this is going to have on our kids and our schools, our school systems and our commutes and the traffic and everything that all these great people have come and drawn attention to, there's no way you can know this in the next 28 days. There's no possible way that you could field all of these questions and respond to them in a way that's meaningful. And therefore, we're asking you to pause the decision, to push the decision out until more people know more things. And that's what's going to ultimately be best for everyone. And whatever that decision is, I'm sure more people will feel better about it. But right now, it's just extremely upsetting to say, like, kind of as soon as possible. Some information's coming out in January about Chapter 70, which, you know, the flaws had attention drawn to them, but that's after the vote. And like, how can we use that as a point to make about why we're doing this decision? And that's, you know, the overall point is this is going way too fast, and it feels a bit intentional that it's going too fast. And that's confusing to everyone in the room. It's confusing to me. Like I said, I know nothing about this overall process. I know it's going to have an enormous impact in my house. And until there's something in writing that I can read and digest and understand, I'm not going to feel comfortable. And I'm going to wake up feeling upset and have to remind myself to calm down. So please pause the process. Please preserve our schools. Please make an effort to work with the city and the state government to solve this another way in the meantime. And until all those other avenues have been exhausted, take no action, please.
Good evening. I'm Ted Burnham. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a parent of a Carleton and an ECC student. And like many others that you've heard from, I'm part of a really large group of parents that have been organizing around understanding and responding to this issue. I'm also a member of the North Shore branch of Democratic Socialists of America. And as both a parent and an activist, I believe strongly that schools are one of the most important civic institutions that we have. And it troubles me that we're talking about them in terms of right sizing. That's business talk. Schools are not a business, they are a public good. I want to see more schools in more neighborhoods. I get that school funding is really complicated and that the school committee in particular is limited by, you have to deal with the funds that you're given by the state and by the city. But I'm frustrated. like Charles said, maybe I should have been attending more of your meetings and maybe I should have been sitting in on the city's budget hearings. I'll own some of that. But like, y'all were in those meetings. You're telling us that this school funding crisis is a slow motion train wreck that's been unfolding for years. And while I deeply appreciate the efforts that y'all are making to try to fix that, where has the community engagement been on this level about that part of the problem? Why are hundreds of families only hearing about Chapter 70 because you told us there were 6 weeks until you maybe probably decide to close one of our schools next year? Why didn't we hear this when we were touring elementary schools a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Why hasn't it been the headline of every weekly update email that we get from the school? Why weren't PTOs recruited to join in those advocacy efforts? I expect elected leaders to lead. And that means sounding the alarm and organizing people to get ahead of our problems and solve them with collective action. I mean, you've heard this from a bunch of folks already. If you ring a 5-alarm fire and you tell caregivers we need to mobilize to save our schools, we will mobilize to save our schools. I still believe that we can solve this problem with collective action. The school district's budget issues look like a zero-sum game on this presentation, but that's only because we're looking at what do they do with the money they got. The question of how much money they get is a matter of political will. Funding can keep up if we bring enough public pressure to bear. So I want to know what it will take to convince the City Council to fund next year's school budget completely. I want to know what it will take to convince state legislators to fix the broken Chapter 70 formula. We've barely even heard about it tonight, that there's a bunch of hearings happening right now about Chapter 70 that are, I want to be engaged in that. I don't want to be engaged in this. We've got hundreds of families here tonight who are fired up to protect our kids, We are hammers in search of nails. And I'd love to see what could happen if we stopped talking about these terrible school closure proposals and instead used all of this community engagement, this grassroots energy, this collective brain power to start working together on actual solutions. We can do this. Fund our schools. Fund our schools. Fund our schools.
That was so inspiring, Ted. I'm feeling so revved up. Just wanting to take a collective breath because this is a lot for all of us to ingest, so just taking a breath. We're all here because we care so deeply. My name is Ashley Waterberg, she, her pronouns. I am the parent to a second grader at Carleton and to a 4-year-old who we are hoping will join her sibling at Carleton next year. I have also been a school social worker in a nearby urban district for the past 13 years. Both of these roles inform the comments I want to make tonight. My partner and I took a day off of work 3 years ago to tour the Salem Elementary Schools and made a very intentional decision when listing our top choices. At no point in any of this process were we informed that there was any chance that Carleton might close or merge with another elementary school. I have never heard this prior to 3 weeks ago, and now I'm being told that this decision is going to be made by mid-December. The conversations about elementary schools closing may have been happening for years. Lost my place. Hold on a second. Where did I go? Okay, but the actual scenarios of what this may look like were just presented a few weeks ago. So no, it's not that I'm uninformed. This is new information. Also, we can call it school reconfiguration and mergers all we want, but it's semantics. Let's call it what it is, a school closure. Schools that merge will most likely adopt a new name, a new mascot. For the students involved, it will feel like and therefore be a closure. Okay, analogy time. It feels like we're being told that there's going to be a major renovation done to our house. We're discussing details of the room that's being renovated without seeing the blueprint of the renovations and understanding the overall vision of the final product and how it will serve our family for years and decades to come. We are putting the cart before the horse. As families and citizens of this city, we need to better understand how this reconfiguration fits into a long-term strategic plan for the city's schools. What is your long-term vision or blueprint for our elementary schools? We must take the time needed to make decisions that not only address the serious fiscal challenges of the district, but also put us in the best position to actualize a long-term plan that will support the students of Salem for decades to come. And what about our SPS staff? Our education system in the US is broken. Teachers are leaving the field every year. Positions go unfilled for months and sometimes years. I see it every day in my job. Have you engaged the staff at the schools where this may happen to try to solicit buy-in? That is how communities move forward together, when they feel heard. Each elementary school has their own culture. You may plan to let go of teachers through this reconfiguration process, but have you considered how many are going to leave? And then how hard it will be to fill these positions. Please pause and take a deep breath. I understand that there is a budget deficit. I understand that many classrooms in our elementary schools are empty. I understand that these two pieces of information put together lead you to the conclusion that schools need to close. But please pause and consider the implications. Over the last 3 weeks, hundreds, if not thousands, of very concerned parents and caregivers have given hours upon hours of their time to consider alternative options to closing schools. Really, really listen to their ideas. Listen to what this means. We love our schools. Our children love their schools. What you have built in this city is working. There have got to be other ways to address this budget issue other than closing a school right now. Please consider pausing this process and really listening. Thank you.
Before I get to my comments, I just want to say I wholeheartedly agree with what the gentleman was saying earlier about exploring every possible option to keep all of our schools open. That said, oh, is this any better? Okay. That said, I just wanted to say I support what he was saying earlier about exploring every possible option to keep all of the schools open. That said, my comments are addressing the situation as presented before us. So, first of all, thank you to the committee for your efforts at transparency and sharing information and for soliciting feedback from the community regarding this potential reconfiguration. As a parent of a Bentley student, I greatly appreciate your continued commitment to supporting and growing the dual language program, as well as expanding access to early childhood education at the ECC. Both of these programs are vital to our community and are in high demand. Before we received the proposals made by Drs. Foudy and Anderson, and I apologize if my pronunciation is off, I and many Bentley parents were understandably anxious about some of the possibilities we had heard circulating in our groups. The most concerning of which was that Bentley, being the school building most in need of repair and renovation, would no longer be housed in its own wall-to-wall environment and would then share a building with another school. Research shows that a scenario such as this would be detrimental to the efficacy of the dual language model and our children's learning experience. Thankfully, none of the proposals recommended this. In fact, only one of the scenarios included Bentley at all. That in itself is a new cause for concern. If Bentley doesn't move, what will its future look like? If Bentley stays where it is, it'll continue to be in the school building most in need of repair and still sharing space with the ECC, where neither program can grow. Bentley serves a unique role in our community. In addition to sharing cultures and experiences and all of the wonderful ancillary benefits our children receive, it offers the opportunity for children from households where Spanish is the home language to begin their academic career on familiar ground, where they can gain mastery of the same content as kids from English-speaking households without the added challenge of having to learn a new language at the same time. And speaking of equity, 80% of Bentley students fall into what are considered high needs categories. But there's another side to the story as well. Kids whose first language is neither Spanish nor English. And my son is one of those kids. When we toured potential schools, one of the biggest draws we had to Bentley was that while 50% of Bentley students came from Spanish-speaking homes, approximately 80% of all Bentley students were bilingual in some language. For us, this was a huge benefit. Our son would be part of a school community where it was the norm to speak more than one language rather than the exception. And if we're thinking about the future of this program, it should be noted that on the most recent census, more than 1 in 5 people ages 5 and up in Salem speak a language other than English at home. And it's not the existence of the Bentley program under debate here, but the ability of that program to grow and thrive and serve a wider audience. That's not just Spanish and English speakers, but that includes all multilingual families in our community, which is a growing demographic. As we've acknowledged, the building Bentley is currently housed in is the one most in need of repair and has no space to grow. And as of right now, there is no current plan as to how and when we make these renovations, and the costs are rising. Even if the building were renovated, there would be the same space constraints we currently face. And as such, of the recommended proposals, I strongly support scenario 2, moving Bentley out of its current building and into a bigger building, which would afford the dual language program adequate room to grow, and consequently, place it closer geographically to a high percentage of households who speak Spanish and other languages besides English in the point. The result of such a move would make it a more attractive option within walking distance for those families' choice in schools, as well as allow the continued growth of the program and provide an equitable service to our community. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Greg Neiman. I'm the parent of a second grader at Carleton. Last night I attended the Q&A with many of y'all. Thank you for your time and staying late on a Sunday evening. And we heard a lot and was reiterated a lot today, and a lot of good faith rationale for why larger schools are better. And I really can't argue that they might be better from an efficiencies of scale perspective, but I would like to push back, as others have done, on the idea that they are better or even equivalent for our students and our children and their education. Like so many of y'all, I felt like I had a research project assigned to me on November 3rd, and so started researching. Found a widely cited study in 2009 by researchers at the University of Toronto entitled Review of Empirical Evidence About School Size Effects. And they have a different conclusion about the ideal school size. Quote, the weight of evidence provided by this research clearly favors smaller schools. Students who traditionally struggle at school and students from disadvantaged social and economic backgrounds are the main benefactors of smaller schools. Elementary schools with large populations of such students should be limited to not more than about 300 students. Those serving economically and socially heterogeneous and relatively advantaged students should be limited in size to about 500 students. Speaking from experience, our daughter started first grade at Witchcraft Heights. For a variety of reasons, she wasn't thriving academically. And after much deliberation, because we understand the impact of another transfer on a young mind, we applied for and were able to transfer her to Carleton, as we thought both the innovation model and being a much smaller and neighborhood school would benefit her. And she is making so much more progress now than she was even at the end of last year. And I believe that some of that is due to being in a more close-knit learning community at a smaller school. Closing and combining elementary schools will limit the effects of school choice as well. I'm sure that their school size is a factor for some parents who have options now for either a medium-sized or larger school throughout the district. Combining the medium-sized schools will create the larger school, absent of any efforts at rebalancing, while eliminating options for medium-sized schools for those who would prefer it. Lastly, the committee has stated pretty publicly that the urgency of these proposed closures is to address the budget shortfall that we've talked about already. However, we have not been shown what the actual cost of closing and relocating a school, or even the associated layoff. It seems like we may be spending more money and further widen an already large deficit in the short term, in fact necessitating even more of the more draconian cuts to services that we have been told are the alternative. I strongly encourage that any effort to reconfigure schools be part of a cohesive, multi-year plan for the district, and not what feels like a rushed effort to reduce expenditures in the short term. And Mayor Pangello, other City Council representatives who may be in the audience or listening, I urge you to be proactive in finding new funding sources for our schools to prevent the need for this closure or any other cost reductions that are going to impact our children's education. While I understand our unique predicament with regards to Chapter 70, another thing that we've all learned so much about in the past couple of weeks, educating our children is the most important thing that we do as a community. It has the most lasting impact, and this is an opportunity for us to live our shared values through action and to fund our schools. And I want to close just echoing a line that I heard earlier today. Please don't close first and plan later. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm the mother of 2 children. One is going to Witchcraft and the other one to Salton. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Reich for everything he does. He is the best superintendent I ever see. But today I came here as a mother. I'm really concerned about their future. I'm not talking about numbers. I know you guys are the board of our children. Today I'm coming here to talk about feelings and safety and their education. You guys said you're gonna merge schools, but nobody talk about safety. How safe it's gonna be those schools to be so big numbers. We will need more, as I heard, better data, better explanations. I'm a mother of a special education kid, and when we figured out she has autism, it was a big thing for us. Ms. Jelson was the person who called me and told me, Marcella, what's going on in your house? And you know why she knows? Because she saw my child differently. I'm pretty sure everybody understands my feelings right now. And I want you guys to understand that too. We are not talking about numbers, we are talking about our children. I know you guys doing the best, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna decide the best for our children. But we have to remember, those children is the future of us, the future of this city. And I'm pretty sure you're gonna take the best decision. Thank you. Thank you for everything.
Hi. I'm out anyways, I probably don't need it, but hi. So I just wanted to say a couple things. I didn't even know if I should speak, but then I thought, yes, I should. My name is Jessica Eveleth, and I am a lifetime resident of Salem. I live right over here currently off of Canal Street. I went to Salem Public Schools my whole life. I sent my children here. And in 2023, am I right? I came over here to Saltonstall as the AP. And prior to that, I worked at Carleton, you see my Carleton people over there, from 2006 until then. And Bethany and I both were part of writing the original innovation plan. We were also both there when we had to renew it 5 years later and 5 years after that. So I feel like I'm in a unique position right now to see, we're talking about Carleton, we're talking about Salts. And I just want to say the first thing I care about in being here are Salem kids, the children of Salem. Having been a Salem child myself, that was personally failed by the Salem public school system. I think that it's really important, and I would not say anything that I thought was gonna fail any child, but I might say some things that are unpopular. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about first is our Saltonstall community here. I just had one of our 9th graders come back and visit us, and she was talking about this. That's why she came by to see us, because she heard about it. And she just looked at us and said, Miss Evelyn, we have had enough. And I said, you're right, Jada. I'm gonna say her name because she would like that. We've had enough. And this community, Saltonstall in particular, has had enough. There has been real significant trauma in this building and for children. And last year, when we had to merge our middle school, that was really hard and really emotional. So I understand the emotions, and I'm a mom. And we all care about our children. Carleton is an amazing school. I was a Bentley kid, that's where I went to school. Put my son in here to get dual language, they cut it in 2nd grade. Happy is back. And a much stronger mom, by the way. So I think all of those things are good. Our community loves our schools. When we merged, even though it was really difficult, I think we did it really well, like really well. And I think that in this moment right now, Saltonstall kids need to stay in their home. They really do. I got parents who have middle schoolers, right, and now over there and still here. And I hear a lot about traffic, but I'm gonna be real with you. We get a lot of people doing their hall, so I'm gonna say that, okay? Don't even, so their older sibling brought them here and then couldn't, right? But we, as adults, we made that okay for our kids. We supported them through through that. And if things are going to change and be different, and we have to make difficult choices, and I know you guys have fun to do tonight, but some of these people, like, I know, well, because I worked with Amanda Campbell, I know where she comes from. You wrote the plan with us. So I think that if you have to move something, in this moment right now, we had a lot of parents stand up here tonight, and I think about that through a demographic lens, because I know a lot of my families aren't here or speaking here tonight, and this is challenging. This structure and system to come here is challenging, especially, when you have to think about who's going to, translate for you, or what you're going to say, and that kind of thing. So a lot of people did speak, but I want to make sure they're not speaking for our families at SALT, and they have that voice at some point in this process. Having said that, in Salem, it's been a long time problem. When I was a kid, it was witchcraft, very demographically different. Then it was Saltonstall when my daughter was here. And right now it's Carleton. And if I'm being honest, that was one of the driving forces for me to come over here at SALT and work here, okay? It is not Carleton's fault that they tried hard to keep their demographics. We fought for that. And it has changed. But right now, schools in Salem elementary schools demographically are comparable. 10% within the state average, except for a Carleton school. It is significantly different. And that's, hard to say. Second thing is this, that with Carleton, the innovation plan should not go away, period. And I think that's what you guys are saying. It is right. It is the correct thing to do, and that is not what should be on the table at all. However, if they have to move somewhere, or might be SALT that has to move somewhere. Oh no, I already said we're staying here because our kids are not leaving. But if that has to happen, I just want to say to Carleton parents that are there, if that happened and you came here, Beth Ann Jellison would not let that innovation plan die. There are really qualified educators over there who have my heart at Carleton. That is my home, Carleton, and this is my home, Saltonstall. We have 11 Saltonstall staff members right now that either work also at Carleton or have in the past. Sorry, I'm over 3 minutes, so I'm going to stop talking, but I just want to say welcome to Saltonstall. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having this, first of all. I appreciate it. I'm going to start off real quick. There's a lot of hostile energy in here, and I can't speak to that because I don't know the history of Saltonstall and what has happened here. But it's very negative in here right now, and I just don't like that. Because there are kids in this room as well, and we're portraying that to them. So, having said that, I will say this. I am the PTO president of the ECC. I'm also a parent of a 4-year-old little girl at the ECC. My wife and I chose to apply for that lottery because of the dual language program. So no matter what happens with this reconfiguration, that is of the utmost importance to me and to my wife, is to keep that program going. In terms of location for the ECC, I'm here as a proponent for the ECC. I can't speak to any other school right now, but I think we should get our own building. I like that idea. I don't think we should share it with anybody. I personally would love to stay where we are and put the money and resources into that building because it is a great location. And it's a community in itself where it is now, just like every other school here. I've heard a lot of emotional arguments, which is very valid. We're dealing with the kids, I get it. I would ask you not only to consider emotions, but consider the facts, which you have been doing, I'm sure. This situation is not the best that we're in. We are having to make decisions that are really, really difficult. But such is life. And I'm going to be probably an unpopular person, but I'm very much about ripping Band-Aids off. this problem may have been building for years and years. We haven't had the same mayor for years and years, so there's blame to be laid in the previous administration. If I have to say that, I will. I don't mind saying that. But I think you guys have been doing a great job in your transparency. I think there's a lot that falls on us to have to do our own research. And I know some of you have already mentioned that tonight, that you failed at looking at the websites and such. I haven't. I enjoy going to the websites. In fact, that meeting we had with like the 100 slides or whatever for the reconfiguration, I dipped out after like 10 minutes and I just read it all online because it was much easier. But I am very grateful for all that information being available online. And again, I am here as the ECC PTO president and a parent, so my whole thing is about that school. I just really want to make sure that it's not forgotten through all of the other issues that are going on with Carleton and Saltonstall. I want to make sure that we continue to thrive as a program, because we are thriving as a program. And that's really all I got. I just thank you guys for the time, and I don't envy you guys in your decision, but I think it should be made in December. And I think the argument for that was made in the previous meeting, where I'd rather not be rushed, and I'd rather make it early than later. And that's it. That's all I got.
Hello, I am not a public speaker, but I'm going to attempt because we are our kids' advocates. Hello, my name is Christine Keogh, and I am a mom of a Saltonstall first grader who has had the pleasure of also helping raise an amazing stepchild who started his first year at the Salem High School this year. I was here on that old Saltonstall playground for my stepson's first day 8 years ago, and I got to watch my daughter have that same experience, which as a mom, to see her excitement and walk in the same place as her brother that she idolizes, it was an indescribable experience for me. I have watched this school for years from the sidelines, being an extra support to my stepson's amazing parents, and I have seen the changes from combined grades, multiple principals that have come and gone, to losing the middle school last year, and as well as helping build that new playground. I chose to be a Saltonstall mom. I chose this community, and I was and am still excited and proud to be a Saltonstall mother, despite the turmoil this reconfiguration has sent through the school community. I love this school. My daughter loves this school. She loves that she walks the same halls as her older brother and had the same teachers as him 2 years in a row. This is the part of the reason we have chose this school. As parents, my husband and I take comfort in knowing that these teachers and these staff have been a part of her life since she was born. Community, walking distance, option of the middle school, which is no longer an option. No bus transportation was required for my family because we live only a few blocks away. While I have seen the improvements in the bus system over the years due to past personal experiences, the bus is not an option for us, which requires me to transport my child now to potentially a different school in a different part with traffic that I am unfamiliar with. My daughter also has another community here in this Saltonstall building, the Boys and Girls Club. Not only is there a chance that her daily routine will be drastically different, but her after-school care might as well be. Not only are you asking the parents who pay for the Boys and Girls Club to add an extra financial burden to consider as they consider other options that come with a higher price tag. From a parent perspective, this feels rushed and not all aspects have been considered. As a parent of an extremely emotionally sensitive child, will you be there to explain to her what is happening? Will you be there when she questions why and she cries? Will you rub her back? How does this school community plan to help facilitate these conversations with our children, especially those where change is very difficult? You say that children are resilient, but you have not met my child. She still cries about the fact that we mentioned that we were moving 4 years ago. What we parents are asking for is a stay in making this decision. It seems rushed and sugar-coated in fancy words and financial lingo and incomplete data, especially considering closing Saltonstall is the majority of the proposed options. It feels like this decision has already been made in closing the wonderful community that my husband and I have been a part of for almost a decade. Because of this reconfiguration, it has made us seriously consider moving to a completely different community that can provide emotional and educational stability for our child. And I can tell you that it is not at the school level that I am losing faith, but in the educational system here in Salem itself, which seems to leave us wanting more.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joy Ajayi Carrier. My husband and I are parents to 2 wonderful boys here at Saltonstall. Urgency is the word that has been used by the school committee, in my opinion, to force parents to fall in line with your poor planning and lack of communication. As parents of our 2 children who attend here, I ask you to urgently revisit the drawing board and develop a more succinct plan. A plan that is favorable to our wonderful families and amazing teachers and staff. Our household belongs to the number of families living off of Highland Avenue who made the choice to send our boys across town to this amazing school, and we have no regrets. If you failed to keep our middle school students in mind last year, I earnestly ask the committee to keep our elementary children in mind during this process. Thank you.
Adjourn.